Good morning, Sydney. My name is James Norquay. It's good to see you here. Just kidding. James redirected me to this time slot. Could say he applied a penalty. I'm going to stop the SEO jokes now. He outranked me. Anyway, it's good to see you. We tried to make this happen for a long time. I think this is the third year that James had asked, and every year I was like, okay, next year. So this time I had to make it happen. I want to start this morning with a quick experiment. I would like you to raise your hand if you would buy a $10 product on ChatGPT. Okay, keep it up. If you would buy a $100 product on ChatGPT. Okay, higher. I want to make sure I see them all. Now keep them up if you would buy a $500 product on ChatGPT. Okay, a few. Some raise their hand now, but not at the $10 product. What's going on there? How about $1,000? Really high. $1,000 product. Wow, okay. 2. Good. Now, would you buy a $10 product on Google? Hands up. Okay, almost everybody. $100, hands up. 500? 1,000. Okay, significantly more. And why is that? The answer goes to the heart of what I'm talking to you about today. What we have to understand is that people, brands, and AI change at different speeds, but not at the same speed. Right? So users are typically a bit ahead of brands, and the question is, how do you match that speed? That's really what I'm talking about today. I'm going to skip the intro because Will did a fantastic job introducing me already. The one thing you have to know about me is that I profusely study AI, and I have a bunch of research that I'm presenting to you today to really make sense of where we are. Now, 12 months ago, something really important happened, and I call it the rift. The rift is the separation of organic traffic from organic ranks. As you can see at the hand of this chart, up until March 2025, those two basically went in parallel, right? Strong correlation, you get better ranks, you get more organic traffic, simple as that. But 12 months ago, that changed. Anybody here want to take a guess at what changed? Shout it in. Yes, I heard it from that corner, AI overviews. Thank you, Joshua. In March 2025, Google significantly ramped up the number of AI overviews in the search results. I have many examples that I brought for you today. And as a result of that, we're seeing that separation of organic ranks and traffic. And as a result, we need to find new ways to make sense of how much Google likes our website. Now, I think we often underestimate how many SERPs actually show AI overviews, because a lot of studies look at a broad range of keywords. But what I did is I looked at the 3 largest sites on the web by traffic, YouTube, Reddit, and Wikipedia. And I looked at how many of their keywords, non-branded keywords that is, show AI overviews. And I'm getting to about 50%. So I'm thinking we're moving towards a world where the majority of keywords will show AI overviews, and this problem is not going to go away. This is the new reality. There's a really important study from Pew Research that shows the effect of AI overviews. So they found, when they looked at over 900 people, pretty robust sample size and pretty robust study, that when Google shows AI overviews, the click-through rate on organic search results is being cut in half. But what's much more interesting than that is this detail. Only 1% of all users clicked on links in AI overviews. And 1% is barely anything. So this is not really a click driver, right? This is a new experience, a new era. And it's not just AI overviews. It's also ChatGPT. There was a leak of ChatGPT data showing that answers that get over 600,000 impressions, like pretty good, get a 0.69% click-through rate, which is abysmal, and surprisingly close to that 1% that Pew Research found. And then lastly, it's not just ChatGPT, it's also AI overviews showing the same result. This is a little teaser of a study that I'm going to present to you in a moment. And it shows that AI mode has an almost 100% zero-click share. So these are not click drivers, right? These are not environments that are supposed to send traffic out, but answer users' question right then and there in the moment. To top that off, I looked at a whole bunch of B2B websites, and I found that referral traffic from ChatGPT has really been stagnating. The breaking point was August of last year, when referral traffic dropped by about 40 or a bit over 40%. And so up until that point, there was a realistic chance that maybe referral traffic from AI chatbots would eventually become significant, but I think that hope has died, right? Like, I think there's just no world in which those traffic volumes will keep up. Now, I brought one client example for you. And as you can see pretty clearly, organic search traffic is declining by 50% year over year, which is not something you really want to brag about at an SEO conference. But interestingly, conversions grew by almost 20% year over year. And so why is that? How come? And the reason is that purchase intent hasn't gone away. People still want to buy stuff. People still search. Traffic is just not a leading indicator anymore. And that brings me to the three core challenges that we are facing today. First of all, AI dominates everything, right? Mobile apps, web search, AI chatbots, whatever you have, you can freaking search the web in Excel. So that's the thing. Click-through rates as a result are kind of going down. We might still get to like a small, tiny baseline of clicks in the future, but it's nowhere near the volumes that we have today. And as a result, traffic is detaching from conversions. But conversions are not necessarily going away, right? People still need stuff. Now, how do we make sense of this new world? To illustrate that, I brought you two user behavior studies, one of AI overviews, one of AI modes, where we recruited 35 or 70 participants respectively. And you can imagine this like a lab where we have people at a computer searching, and we look over their shoulders, and we record everything that they see and everything that they say. We gave them 8 or 7 respective tasks to complete, and then had them speak out loud what they think and what they feel. And we're able, with the help of AI, to codify that to a very fine degree to truly understand how normal people interact with AI search results. And so the first result of those studies is that, interestingly, when it comes to the final answer, right, when it comes to the final click that people make before they stop their search journey, only 20% of people click on things in AI overviews or get information from AI overviews. It doesn't have to be click. But 80% get their final information or their final click from the classic search results, which tells us that even though traffic is going down significantly, these classic search results still play an important role, right? There's still value in ranking highly, even though we might not get as many clicks. Next, we looked at the same thing, like where are people going when they leave Google and when they complete their user journey? And we split those results by kind of the type of website that they're going to. And we found that 18% of the time, people click on UGC platforms like Reddit and YouTube to get their final answer. However, when Google shows AI overviews, that number jumps up to 30%. And when we looked at kind of the transcripts and what people are saying as to why they do that, we realized that they're validating the AI answer. So this is interesting user behavior that crept up, which is people get their answer from AI, but then they double check it, especially when it's risky, with what they perceive as other users, right? They go to Reddit and they're like, is this sneaker really legit? Like, is this the best screen, blah, blah, blah. Is this the best software? So they double check it, which means for us that being present on these platforms in most cases is important. Now, this is, the next finding is absolutely critical and changed my understanding of search completely. So we also looked at what is the evaluation process when people see AI answers or when they look at organic search results. What is the evaluation process? What do they ask themselves to see if that's the result that they want to click on or that they want to read? And when we found that the #1 filter is not relevance, but it's trust. So when people evaluate AI answers, they first ask themselves when they see a brand, do I know this brand? Do I trust this brand? And then they go to relevance. This is absolutely critical. Before users even ask themselves if a result answers their question, they ask themselves if they trust the source or the destination. So if you are not in the minds of your users before they search, you have a big problem, right? You're working uphill. Now, when we look at AI mode, we found that engagement generally is pretty high. On average, sessions in AI mode at the time of the study were over a minute long, which is roughly how long most people brush their teeth. The majority of results is text-driven, obviously, right? There's not a lot of rich results, with the exception of some shopping carts. But together, it means that people are highly engaged. They read the answers. And it's important for us to appear in these answers to influence the purchase journey down the road. Now, this is really interesting. We also looked at the few clicks that are still happening. Where are they actually going? The majority go to shopping results if they appear, which makes sense because we asked participants in the study to shop for products in certain cases or in some cases. And so, of course, they click on shopping carts when they appear. But 18%, 1 out of 5 people, when they get an answer that's satisfactory to them, would open a new tab and then directly navigate to the website as opposed to trying to click on something in AI mode. Right? So good luck attributing that. Right? There's no way of knowing where people are coming from without asking them after the purchase or sign-up process. So pretty critical. Where that leaves us is that generally trust beats relevance. And I want to pound this thing home because trust has already been part of EAT, right? It's the T, and it's the most important factor in EAT. And it finally makes sense to me when I saw this study. Trust beat relevance. People really engage with AI. It's not this kind of scanning behavior that we know from organic search, but people really read this stuff. They get the information that they need. But organic results still matter, right? We're not at a point yet where we can abandon and not care about organic results. They matter for many different reasons. And so based on these studies and based on these results, I want to introduce you my playbook for this new era of AI search. And this playbook is based on 2 different frameworks. I call them the visibility layer and the trust stack. Each of them have 4 different areas that I will walk you through step by step in the next couple of minutes, including some examples of how I applied these areas and factors and the results that they yield. These are also the frameworks that I apply with clients like HIMSS and Airwallex. You see some nice graphs go up and to the right. Make of that whatever you want, but this is coming from the field, right? This is not just theoretical academic knowledge. This is stuff that I've tested out. I'm going to show you how now. All right, let's talk about visibility. It really comes down to 4 things. First, additive content. How do you provide or create content that's truly original, that's fresh, that has the right style? And how do you groom and foster your reputation, which sounds like a term from 1999, but I promise you, like it's coming back. It's cool again. Okay, before we jump into that, it's really important to understand that content, if it's successful in 2026, is polymorphic, which kind of means that it lives in an open relationship, but it's more like an open relationship with different platforms, right? So in the pre-AI era, content mostly had to satisfy Google, right? Google web retrieval, Google checks the content, is it relevant for specific searches, show it, rank it, all is good. But now, content has many masters, if you will, right? There's not just different platforms from Google, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Reddit, YouTube, etc. But it also needs to be viable for AI training, for RAG, for web retrieval, and now for agents, right? Bless you. So there's many different things that content has to do to be satisfactory. Okay, let's jump in. So additive content, what does that mean? Additive to me is the opposite of evergreen content. Evergreen content is the stuff that you find a good answer to from AI, right? There's very little marginal utility anymore to write a guide about what is or how to write. Like if it's not brand new or complex, then AI can answer it and we probably don't need it. So additive content, new original things, thought leadership, research, that is something that AI cannot yet provide. And one of the best ways to find topics and additive content, for me, comes from transcripts. So one pet peeve that I have with SEO is the classic keyword research process where we look at what terms are people probably looking for, ranked by search volume, and then we all go after the same terms. But there are other sources of topics that are important for our audience. And one of these sources are transcripts. For example, when your sales team has a conversation with a prospect, right? These are typically recorded. We can analyze these transcripts and then find topics and questions that people really care about. This is an example from a client where I applied this. We looked at 40, 50 call transcripts with prospects that turn into clients. And you can see that we found some really good topics that we otherwise might not have found. So we applied classic product and marketing questions like, what are the problems of the prospect? What are they using today? What are their fears, uncertainties, and doubts? And then out of that, we analyze it with AI, of course. You can use Claude Code or whatever. In this case, it's a tool called Humata AI. And we found these really cool topics that we then turned into content that performed way, way better than the stuff that we created with the classic keyword research process. And the reason is that these are topics that are top of mind for people that are in the market. Right? So you can see another nice chart going up into the right here. It had really good impact on organic search. But besides that, it also had a much, much higher conversion rate than the stuff that we had created before, because these are topics that are top of mind and important, and that's what additive content can look like. Okay, let's talk about freshness. Nothing new to any one of you here. We all know that fresh content is important. But interestingly, LLMs value fresh content more than Google does or search engines do. So there's a study from Ahrefs that looked at the content that is cited or performs well, how many days old is that content, and they found that the content is typically younger when cited on LLMs. And the reason is that LLMs obviously have a training data cutoff. There's only so much that they can ingest at a time. And when there are topics or information that they need that are not within their training data, they rely on live web retrieval. And then freshness is the #1 thing that they're looking for, obviously, right? They don't want content that's already in their training data. Aerops found that there's this like high-level threshold of 3 months where content that's younger than 3 months generally performs best, but we have to be careful, right? There's a lot of context and nuance here. Some topics might need content that is not older than a week. In other terms, it's fine if the content is like older than a year. So there has to be nuance that we apply. But what is interesting here is that this freshness factor works across any user intent. So whether you want to compare products or look for information or whatever, LLMs always prefer fresher content. And so I went out to one of my clients and we applied this. And what you see here is the citation rate. So citation rate across the board for the prompts that we are tracking. And as you can see, there is a jump where citation rate tripled. And we did a very simple thing to accomplish that. And all we did was to add a date to our landing pages that shows when the content was last updated. This is a large site, so this was multiplied across many thousands or hundreds of thousands of pages. And obviously, we did make real changes to the content on these pages, right? Or they automatically updated. But that simple change, just making it easier for an LLM to see how fresh that content is, already had a profound impact. Let's talk about style. Style really is about the way that you write. And I would argue this is relatively new in the AI world. Google didn't really care about the style as long as it was relevant, right? You had the right information in your content. And then, of course, users care about the style, right? The content has to be engaging. But LLMs, as opposed to search engines, really care about that stuff. So what I found is that, for example, definitive writing, very clear writing, gets you almost 2 times more citations. There's an analysis of over 1 million AI answers, and I looked at what does the content have in common, or what are the patterns in the content that gets cited. And what I found is that when you make it very clear what you're talking about, without too much fluff or storytelling or lore, you're being cited more often. Another stylistic factor that has been really interesting is entities. So entities are concepts, topics. They're essentially the things that you write about, and the more clearly you name these things, the more you're being cited, because it helps LLMs make associations between the tokens in your content, or in other words, it helps them understand what the content is about, right? So when you write stuff like, there are many good tools for this task, it's not cited as often as, these are the top tools, and you name them specifically. And then the last thing that I already mentioned is reputation. Web reputation, it's a mastermind of word crafting. But essentially, reputation is about how often and how are you talked about on the web. So we have studies here from Ahrefs and from SEMrush showing that web mentions are one, if not the most important factor deciding how often you show up in AI. And interestingly, across all the different AI chatbots, so ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, etc., and across most topics or use cases or user intent. So this idea of your reputation, really, really critical. I also did an analysis of backlinks, because I was curious, do backlinks matter in this AI search world or not? Turns out they do have a profound impact, but I think it's a bit of a red herring. I think what's actually happening is that these are treated like web mentions, and LLMs care less about whether it's an actual backlink or a web mention. But what I have found is that quality is the most important aspect when it comes to mentions/backlinks. So volume, much less important. Quality, meaning being mentioned in the right context, on the right side, plays a much, much larger role than having lots of mentions across the web. One of my favorite things or ways to understand where I need to be mentioned is a very traditional SEO process. So you can either look at all of the keywords that matter to you and then see which domains have the highest market share or search share of these keywords, or you can do the same thing with prompts. Just take all your prompts, you see what are the platforms and sites that are most visible, and then you prioritize them. And when it comes to platforms like Reddit, you break that down by subreddit. But that's essentially a way for you to get started and think about, okay, where do I even need to be present? Two companies that have done a really good job at that, both clients of mine. One is Xero. Xero has this research hub called XSBI, where they publish research about small businesses, economic data about small businesses. And because it's new and unique and additive, it gets consistently cited, mentioned, and linked. And the other example is Ramp, fintech company growing pretty well. And Ramp built this AI index where they look at all the credit card spend data and what people spend their money on. And then they look at how much money goes to AI. They track that over time. And this is like prime data for publishers, for LLMs, because it's new and additive. Okay, let's talk about trust. Trust is all about the meta layer, right? So visibility is how you show up. Trust is how do you make people go with your answer, or if they still do, click on your answer. And the first part about trust is evidence. It's cool when you claim something, but you have to back it up. You have to bring receipts. You can do that in many different forms. It can be patents, it can be certifications, but it can also just be a lot of referencing of data and facts. So something that I do with clients is we look at the fact density of our content. And there's no perfect fact density, but generally we want to make sure that the content that we create cites relevant, fresh, and good data. The second thing, besides receipts or evidence, is experts. People follow people. And if credible and important people in a space talk good about your brand, that has a profound impact, right? As I mentioned earlier, people validate AI answers on user-generated content platforms. And so the same principle applies to influencers, creators, analysts, journalists. If they talk well about you, that leaves a lasting impression in your mind. And therefore, when you encounter that brand, you're more likely to believe their answer or to click on the result or even purchase from them. There's another side to evidence that I call validation. So one of my current clients is G2. I'm lucky to work with them. I had been there in-house for years long in the past. Now I work with them again. And one of the first things that I did is I looked at the relationship between software reviews and AI visibility. And what I found is that there's a small but robust and recurring correlation between software reviews and the visibility of these brands. Or in other words, reviews, doesn't have to be software, it can also be e-commerce, Trustpilot, Google Maps, whatever, but reviews are an important layer of consensus for LLMs where they see whether what a company claims to be is actually in line with what their clients are saying, right? So long story short, invest in reviews for AI visibility. They don't replace the basics, but they're a nice little top-off. And then lastly, reputation. And reputation I found very hard to quantify. You can look at things like branded searches, but it's not really that indicative. And then I found this concept from Dan Petrovich, you probably all know him, who talks about selection rate and selection bias. And the basic idea is that when you ask an LLM several times what are the recurring stable patterns that occur in the answer across all of these runs? We know that LMs give you a slightly different answer every time you ask it a question, right? It's kind of a problem. But if you, for example, run a prompt 5 times consecutively, some elements and brands show up consistently. And that means that these LMs have a high confidence that these brands or elements of the answer are actually critical and important. And so we can make use of that to understand, are we in that sample size or in that group of recurring elements or not? So that helps us understand what is our reputation with LLMs. You can do simple things of just like asking the LLM a bunch of times about your brand and then see what does it consistently say versus not. Okay, so to bring that home, a lot going on, but we can confidently say that the classic click funnel is breaking. And classic playbooks don't work as well anymore. As a result of that, we're moving from a world of clicks to a world of influence, where we try to influence users along the purchase journey. And the 2 critical components to that is showing up, meaning visibility, and then, of course, trust, which break down into the factors that I showed you in the last couple of slides, right? So visibility is really about additive content that is fresh, you have a good reputation, and then trust is about evidence, it's about experts, validation, and your reputation. Before I wrap this up for good, I share insights like these every week in the growth memo. Quick show of hands, who here is already subscribed? Okay, awesome. You're a good company, Amazon, New York Times, et cetera, that's the pitch. Now, good. Now, we're moving from an old to a new world. The old world is about a single platform, which is Google. The new world is about multiple platforms. Reddit, YouTube, Google, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, whatever you have. We're also moving from a world of broad intent, where we optimize for shorthead keywords, to a world of very specific intent, right? Prompts are very rich, on average 5 times longer than classic search keywords. So we need to make sure that we have the right content that satisfies these specific intents. We're also moving from a world of evergreen content to a world of additive content, right? New original insights that are not out there yet. We're obviously moving from a world of clicks to influence, and from a world of relevance to trust. So where that leaves us is that yes, brands, people in AI are all changing at different speeds, and the ones that win are the most trusted. Thank you very much.